When humanity's weakest colonist casually dismantled a 9-foot bio-enhanced killing machine from over a kilometer away, using what the galaxy considered ancient junk, 17 star systems suddenly realized they'd been sharing space with apex predators who chose to be neighbors instead of conquerors. The aliens didn't just forget how to breathe. They forgot how to sleep, because every human living peacefully among them had apparently been holding back enough firepower to rewrite the political map of known space. Before we continue this story, if you're new here, make sure to subscribe to HFY Havoc, hit the bell, and like this video. Because if you want more epic HFY sci-fi stories like this one, you don't want to miss out. Today's tale isn't just about superior marksmanship. It's about the terrifying moment when the galaxy's harmless species decided to give everyone a gentle reminder about the difference between can't and won't. Let's dive into the sniper Smirked the Warlord dropped, where recreational target practice becomes a masterclass in cosmic diplomacy. Warlord Krexthul had made 3 fundamental errors in his long career of professionally ending things. First, he assumed larger always meant scarier. Second, he believed that bio-enhanced killing machines deserved respect simply for existing. Third, and most critically, he thought distance was his enemy's disadvantage. The morning air on Tertius 9 carried the metallic scent of processed atmosphere and the underlying chemical tang that marked every terraformed moon in this sector. Krexthul's massive form dominated the ceremonial combat circle, 9 feet of genetically perfected predator wrapped in military-grade exoskeletal armor that had cost more than most planetary defense budgets. Each servo-assisted movement generated a low mechanical hum that vibrated through the observation platforms scattered around the proving ground. "This is genuinely embarrassing," muttered Sub-Chancellor Vixtar into his diplomatic recorder, his 6 eyes tracking the grotesque display below. The hegemony's finest warrior was currently flexing for 17 different news feeds, each servo-enhanced muscle group rippling in sequence like some nightmarish promotional advertisement. "We're watching a creature designed by committee perform for cameras." On the opposing side of the circle, a human female sat cross-legged on a supply crate, methodically adjusting something that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts and good intentions. She appeared to weigh perhaps 60% of what Krexthul's left arm weighed, and her equipment suggested either supreme confidence or complete delusion. "Is that—" Ambassador Threnke squinted through his environmental suit's visual enhancement. "Is that actually a kinetic projectile weapon?" "Appears to be," confirmed War Correspondent Zielnix, whose multispectral analysis suite was having difficulties classifying the device. "Chemical propellant, metallic projectiles, manual operation. I'm reading technology signatures that predate our industrial standardization protocols by at least 4 centuries. A ripple of incredulous laughter passed through the Krillian observers section. Their species had abandoned kinetic weapons around the time they discovered controlled fusion, viewing such tools as relics of their embarrassingly violent past. The idea that anyone would bring one to a formal combat demonstration struck them as either deeply traditional or profoundly stupid. "The humans have officially lost their minds," announced Tribune Cassavel to his recording staff. "They're sending an unaugmented female with museum pieces to face our most decorated warrior. This isn't a duel, it's assisted suicide with an audience." The human, who had introduced herself simply as Apex, finished her adjustments and stood. Her movements possessed an economy that seemed almost lazy compared to Krexthul's aggressive posturing. She walked to what the combat officials had designated as her starting position, a marked zone approximately 50 meters from her opponent. Then she kept walking. Sub-Chancellor Vixtar consulted his datapad. The engagement parameters specified close-quarter combat. Standard dual protocols require— She's not stopping, interrupted Threnke. Indeed, Apex continued her leisurely stroll away from the combat circle, moving at the pace of someone heading out for afternoon exercise rather than mortal combat. The various news feeds followed her progress with increasing confusion as she passed the first distance marker, then the second, then several more that hadn't been marked because nobody had anticipated needing them. "Where exactly is she going?" demanded Cassavel. Krexthul, meanwhile, had stopped flexing and was now rotating his head assembly to track his opponent's position. His combat protocols clearly hadn't included provisions for enemies who wandered off in the opposite direction. The ceremonial combat circle suddenly looked very small and very empty, with only one participant. "This is highly irregular," announced the adjudicator through the public address system, his mechanical voice echoing across the proving ground. "Combatant Apex, please return to your designated engagement zone." Apex raised one hand in acknowledgement, but continued walking. She had now reached what the observers estimated to be roughly 800 meters from the combat circle, where she settled down behind a small ridge that provided convenient cover and an excellent view of the proceedings. "Someone explain to me," Sub-Chancellor Vixtar said slowly, "how this constitutes a duel." "Maybe it doesn't," suggested War Correspondent Zielnix. "Maybe we're witnessing something else entirely." The human had deployed her weapon on some kind of stabilization system and was now peering through what appeared to be an optical magnification device. From this distance, Krexthul looked like a very large, very obvious target standing alone in a very open space, which was probably not the tactical advantage he had been anticipating. "This is absurd," Tribune Cassavel declared. "She's not even within effective range. Chemical propellant weapons lose accuracy exponentially over distance. The atmospheric interference alone should make precision targeting impossible beyond 200 meters. "Maybe she doesn't know that," suggested Threnche. "Or maybe," said a voice that hadn't spoken before, "she knows something you don't." The observers turned to locate the source of this comment and found a human male wearing the neutral gray uniform of a mining cooperative administrator. He had been sitting quietly in the civilian observation section, apparently unbothered by the fact that his species representative had just wandered off to conduct whatever she was conducting from nearly a kilometer away. "And you are?" asked Vixtar. "Administrative Coordinator Chen. I handle logistics for the Tertius 9 mining operations." He gestured toward the distant figure of Apex. "She handles other things." "Such as?" "Distance calculations, mostly." A sound emerged from the direction of Apex's position, a sharp crack that echoed off the surrounding terrain with the distinctive signature of chemical propellant ignition. It was followed immediately by a much more interesting sound, the high-pitched whine of Krexthul's primary targeting system as something very small and very fast punched through its outer housing. The Warlord's head snapped toward his opponent's position, servo-assisted reflexes finally processing that he was under attack. His tactical display flickered and died, victim of whatever had just happened to his sensors. "Lucky shot," muttered Cassavel, though his confidence seemed somewhat diminished. 3 seconds later, another crack echoed across the proving ground. This time, Krexthul's left shoulder armor sprouted a small hole, and his weapon stabilization system began emitting error warnings. "Very lucky," Threnke agreed, though he was now leaning forward in his observation chair. The third shot removed Krexthul's communications array. The fourth disabled his backup targeting system. The fifth put a hole through his ceremonial rank insignia, without so much as scratching the armor beneath it. "Stop calling them lucky shots," suggested Coordinator Chen mildly. "It's embarrassing." Warlord Krexthul, who had never in his extensive career been systematically disassembled by an opponent he couldn't see, began advancing toward Apex's position in great, bounding strides that covered ground with impressive speed. His remaining systems calculated approximately 90 seconds to reach effective combat range. The sixth shot took out his left knee actuator. Krexthul stumbled but maintained forward momentum, his bio-enhanced physiology compensating for the mechanical failure. The seventh shot removed his right shoulder weapon mount. The eighth shot perforated his backup power cell, causing a small electrical fire that filled his helmet with smoke. By the time Warlord Krexthul had covered half the distance to his opponent's position, he was limping, partially blind, completely disarmed, and beginning to suspect that this engagement was not proceeding according to his preferred parameters. The ninth shot punched through his helmet's external air filtration system. The 10th shot removed the decorative plume that marked his rank within the hegemony's military hierarchy. "She's toying with him," whispered Ambassador Threnke. "No," corrected Coordinator Chen, consulting a device that looked suspiciously like a betting calculator. "She's just getting warmed up." In the observation platforms, 17 different news feeds were broadcasting live footage of the galaxy's most feared warrior being methodically reduced to his component parts by an opponent armed with what appeared to be antique technology. The commentary had shifted from confident predictions of human defeat to increasingly nervous speculation about what they were actually witnessing. Sub-Chancellor Vixtar stared at his tactical readouts, trying to make sense of the numbers his equipment was providing. According to every ballistic calculation algorithm at his disposal, the shots being fired should have been wildly inaccurate due to atmospheric distortion, gravitational variance, and simple distance degradation. Instead, they were hitting targets the size of circuit boards with mechanical precision. "Someone," he announced to no one in particular, "is going to need to update our threat assessment protocols." The emergency session convened in Observation Platform 7 had not been scheduled, which meant nobody had prepared proper diplomatic protocols for a situation where the galaxy's most decorated killer was being educated in applied physics by someone who looked like a maintenance technician. The Krillian archives contain 47 separate accounts of the tiny Deathbringers, announced Lore Keeper Vashek, his crystalline voice crackling with suppressed panic. Small bipeds who appeared during the Rimward expansion wars eliminated entire battle groups, then vanished. We assumed they were different species from different sectors. Defense analyst Crixmore consulted her datapad with the frantic efficiency of someone whose career was evaporating in real time. The Vespian Collective has similar reports. Creatures matching human physiognomy involved in 17 separate incidents of impossible tactical outcomes over the past 3 centuries. Our military historians classified them as propaganda exaggerations. Below them, Warlord Krexthul had abandoned his direct approach in favor of seeking cover behind what appeared to be a decorative rock formation. This tactical decision lasted approximately 11 seconds before the 11th shot removed his primary communication relay, the 12th destroyed his emergency beacon, and the 13th put a hole through the rock itself to demonstrate that his chosen shelter was merely an illusion of safety. "The Jek Crystal Singers have a death hymn about the Silent Ones," whispered harmonic consul Zektil, her resonant voice dropping to frequencies that made nearby equipment vibrate sympathetically. "Beings who kill from beyond perception range, using weapons that sound like breaking thunder. Our warrior poets composed it after the contested Nebula incident." "When was that?" asked Sub-Chancellor Vixtar, though he suspected he didn't want to know the answer. 463 years ago. We lost 2 entire assault fleets to what our combat records describe as atmospheric disturbances with hostile intent. Coordinator Chen was still sitting quietly in the civilian section, occasionally making notes on his datapad, as though he were observing a particularly routine equipment demonstration, rather than the systematic deconstruction of military certainties that had governed interstellar politics for generations. "Excuse me," Tribune Cassavel called over to him. Your colleague appears to be rewriting our understanding of ballistic physics. Would you care to explain how? Chen looked up from his calculations with the mild expression of someone who had been interrupted during routine paperwork. She's using a rifle. We can see that. What we cannot see is how a chemical propellant weapon is maintaining accuracy over terrain that should make precision targeting impossible. Maybe your understanding of impossible needs recalibration. The 14th shot severed Krexthul's backup power coupling, causing his exoskeleton to emit a series of warning chimes that sounded vaguely musical. The 15th shot removed his left wrist actuator. The 16th put a neat hole through his ceremonial helmet crest without disturbing the underlying structure. She's writing her initials on him, observed war correspondent Zielnix, with the tone of someone whose professional vocabulary had suddenly become inadequate. Ambassador Threnku activated his diplomatic recorder and began speaking in the careful cadence of someone creating evidence for future tribunals. Personal log, Ambassador Threnchi, Tertius 9 observation mission. I am witnessing what appears to be a systematic demonstration of technological capabilities that do not align with any known threat assessments regarding human military potential. On the combat field, Krexthul had discovered that his sophisticated tactical computer could no longer provide meaningful guidance because the situation had exceeded all programmed parameters. His opponent was engaging from a range his designers had considered irrelevant, using weapons his analysts had classified as primitive, achieving results his strategists had deemed impossible. The hegemony's bioenhancement protocols specifically account for kinetic projectile threats, announced defense analyst Crixmore, consulting her, military technical manuals with increasing desperation. Krexthul's armor should deflect chemical propellant rounds unless they achieve velocities beyond the theoretical maximum for that technology. Theoretical according to whom? Asked Chen. According to physics. Ah, there's your problem. The 17th shot removed Krexthul's right elbow joint. The 18th destroyed his environmental sensor array. The 19th punched through his chest armor to disable his primary life support system without actually penetrating far enough to threaten biological functions. She's performing surgery with a sniper rifle, whispered Laura Keeper Vashek. This is not warfare. This is artistry with lethal implications. Sub-Chancellor Vixtar had been conducting increasingly frantic consultations with his military advisors via encrypted channels, and the responses he was receiving suggested that panic was spreading through command structures across multiple star systems. My superiors are requesting clarification regarding human technological capabilities. Specifically, they want to know if what we're observing represents standard human military equipment or some kind of experimental prototype. Coordinator Chen paused in his note-taking to consider the question. Standard. Standard. Apex is using equipment from our civilian hunting surplus stores. That's not a military weapon. It's what humans use for recreational target shooting. The silence that followed this statement stretched long enough for 3 more shots to echo across the proving ground, each one removing another component from Krexthul's increasingly minimal arsenal of functional systems. Recreational, repeated Tribune Cassavel slowly. Target shooting, added Ambassador Threnke, as though testing the words for hidden meanings. For entertainment, clarified defense analyst Crixmore, her voice carrying the hollow quality of someone whose worldview was undergoing rapid structural revision. Below them, Warlord Krexthul had been reduced to his basic bioenhanced physiology and whatever armor plating Apex had chosen to leave intact. He was still mobile, still dangerous in close quarters, and still completely incapable of closing the distance to his opponent before she finished whatever educational demonstration she was conducting. The humans have been living among us for decades, said Harmonic Consul Zektil, her crystalline form resonating with harmonics that spoke of deep unease. They established colonies, engaged in trade, participated in diplomatic functions. They seemed so harmless, suggested Chen helpfully. Irrelevant, corrected Zektil. Small, fragile, technologically primitive. Their ships were slow, their weapons simple, their military capabilities negligible. We evaluated them correctly, insisted Crixmore. Human technology is inferior to galactic standard across all measurable categories. Measurable by whom? Asked Chen. Using which standards? The 23rd shot removed the last of Krexthul's external weapon mounts. The 24th disabled his emergency medical systems. The 25th shot did something that caused his remaining armor to emit a long, mournful electronic wail that sounded distinctly like machinery experiencing existential crisis. Our threat assessment algorithms analyze available data to predict military capabilities, explained Crixmore. We've been monitoring human development for over 2 centuries. Your species lacks the industrial capacity to produce advanced military hardware. We don't need to produce it, Chen replied. We already have it. Where? Our surveillance networks would have detected large-scale military manufacturing, weapons testing, fleet construction. Human space shows no evidence of significant military buildup. Chen gestured toward the distant figure of Apex, who was still methodically dismantling the galaxy's most feared warrior with what appeared to be casual competence. You're looking at our military buildup. Every human colony, every trading post, every civilian settlement. We don't separate our military and civilian populations because we don't need to. The implications of this statement rippled through the observation platforms, like a shockwave propagating through multiple species' understanding of galactic power structures. If every human civilian possessed military capabilities equivalent to what they were witnessing, then threat assessment protocols developed over millennia of interstellar politics had just become obsolete. How many humans are currently living in Krillian space? Asked Laura Keeper Vashek quietly. Tribune Cassavel consulted his diplomatic databases. Approximately 40,000, distributed across mining operations, trading posts, and cultural exchange programs. In Vespian territory? 60,000. Jek Crystal Singer domains? 35,000. Hegemony space? 120,000. The mathematical implications of these numbers hung in the air like a toxic cloud, while below them, the 28th shot removed the final component of Krexthul's targeting systems, leaving him functionally blind and operating on biological senses alone. Every one of them, whispered Chen conversationally, learned to shoot before they learned to drive. The 32nd shot should have been the kill shot. Instead, it removed the final decorative element from Krexthul's armor, a small ceremonial blade that had been welded to his left gauntlet for purely aesthetic purposes. The Warlord now stood in the center of the proving ground, wearing nothing but basic bioenhancement chassis and whatever dignity he could salvage from being systematically stripped by someone he had yet to see clearly. Then the shooting stopped. Krexthul waited, servo motors whining softly as his damaged systems struggled to maintain basic functionality. His tactical displays were dark, his weapons offline, his armor reduced to decorative weight. But he was still breathing, still standing, still very much alive. Why hasn't she finished him? Asked Sub-Chancellor Vixtar, voicing the question that had occurred to every observer simultaneously. The answer came not from Coordinator Chen, but from Apex herself. Her voice carried clearly across the proving ground, amplified by portable equipment that had materialized from whatever supplies she had brought to this increasingly surreal engagement. "Warlord Krexthul," she called, her tone conversational despite the distance. "You issued a challenge for single combat to determine mining rights on Tertius 9. You specified that the winner would demonstrate their species' fitness for territorial expansion, while the loser would be classified as unsuitable for future development projects." Krexthul's remaining audio sensors picked up her words clearly, His response emerged as a mechanical rasp, filtered through damaged vocal processors. I did. And you expected to win because you are biologically superior, technologically enhanced, and trained specifically for killing things. I am. All of which, Apex continued, assumes that winning this engagement requires killing you. But the terms of your challenge don't actually specify death as a victory condition. They specify demonstration of superiority. The observers exchanged glances that carried the weight of beings who were beginning to suspect that they had misunderstood something fundamental about the situation they were witnessing. What are you demonstrating? Krexthul asked. That I could have killed you with the first shot, and the second, and every shot after that, if killing you had been the objective. Apex's voice maintained its conversational tone, as though discussing weather patterns rather than tactical annihilation. I've put 32 rounds into systems that were within millimeters of your biological components. If I had wanted you dead, you would have been dead before you finished your opening flexing routine. Defense analyst Crixmore was conducting frantic calculations on her tactical display, cross-referencing the shot placements with anatomical data from Krexthul's bioenhancement specifications. She's right, she whispered. Every single impact point was adjacent to critical biological systems. She could have severed his spinal cord, punctured his hearts, destroyed his brainstem. She was performing precision surgery at a range where our best marksmen couldn't hit the broad side of a cargo hauler. Krexthul processed this information with the methodical efficiency of a military mind trained to analyze tactical situations. You are demonstrating restraint. I am demonstrating choice, Apex corrected. Restraint implies that I want to kill you, but am holding back. Choice means that I decided killing you would be counterproductive to my actual objectives. Which are? Explaining something to your audience that they appear to have missed during several centuries of threat assessment. Tribune Cassavel activated his recording equipment with the urgency of someone who suspected that history was being made in real time. Whatever was about to be revealed, his superiors would want a complete record. The human colonies throughout known space, Apex continued, exist by choice, not by necessity. We could have claimed any territory we wanted, eliminated any resistance we encountered, imposed whatever terms suited our requirements. We didn't do that because conquest is tedious, administration is boring, and most species are more useful as trading partners than as subjects. Ambassador Threnke felt his diplomatic training activate automatically, searching for the appropriate protocol for a situation where a single individual was redefining interstellar power dynamics. His manual contained no relevant procedures. You are claiming, Krexthul said slowly, that human military capabilities exceed those of established galactic powers. I'm not claiming anything. I'm showing you 32 pieces of evidence that your entire understanding of human capabilities has been fundamentally incorrect from the beginning. Lorekeeper Vashek had been consulting his historical databases throughout this exchange, and the results of his research were causing his crystalline form to emit stress harmonics that made nearby equipment vibrate. The Rimward expansion wars, he announced to the observation platforms. The contested nebula incident, the Vespian fleet disappearances. If humans were responsible for those events, then we've been living with apex predators who decided to pretend they were herbivores, finished Harmonic Consul Zektil, her voice resonating with frequencies that spoke of deep existential unease. Coordinator Chen finally looked up from his datapad, where he had been conducting what appeared to be routine administrative calculations throughout the entire engagement. The mining rights for Tertius 9 were never actually in dispute, he mentioned casually. The hegemony filed their claim through proper channels. We reviewed it according to standard procedures, and we were prepared to negotiate reasonable terms for shared development. War correspondent Zielnix stopped recording to stare at him directly. Then what is this? A teaching moment, Chen replied. Apparently, some members of the galactic community had developed misconceptions about human capabilities, and intentions. Apex volunteered to provide a practical demonstration of the facts. Sub-Chancellor Vixtar felt his understanding of the situation undergo rapid structural revision. This entire engagement was designed to demonstrate that humans could have been conquering the galaxy all along, but chose not to. Mostly chose not to, Chen corrected. There were a few instances where conquest seemed like the most efficient solution to local problems, but those were exceptional circumstances. Such as? Pirates, mostly. Slave traders. The occasional dictator who mistook politeness for weakness. Chen returned to his calculations with the air of someone discussing routine pest control. Standard maintenance issues. On the proving ground, Krexthul had been conducting his own analysis of the tactical situation and had reached conclusions that aligned uncomfortably well with the growing realizations among the observers. You are stating that humans deliberately concealed their military capabilities in order to maintain peaceful coexistence with other species. We didn't conceal anything, Apex replied. We just didn't advertise. There's a difference between hiding your capabilities and not feeling the need to prove them constantly. Defense analyst Crixmore reviewed her threat assessment databases with the growing certainty that her department's analytical models had been missing critical variables. If human civilians possess military capabilities equivalent to our elite warriors, then our strategic planning assumptions are completely invalid. Your strategic planning assumptions, Chen observed, were based on the idea that humans were primitive newcomers who could be managed through standard diplomatic pressure and economic incentives, which was true as long as you didn't mistake our willingness to be managed for inability to manage ourselves. Tribune Cassavel was composing urgent communications to his superiors when a thought occurred to him that made his diplomatic training freeze like a malfunctioning computer. How many humans know about this demonstration? All of them, Chen replied matter-of-factly. It's being broadcast on our communication networks, standard educational programming. Educational? Most humans have never seen what our equipment can do against modern military hardware. This is quite informative for our younger colonists. The silence that followed this statement was broken only by the sound of Krexthul's damaged systems attempting to process a situation that had exceeded all of his combat programming parameters. What happens now? The Warlord asked finally. Apex began disassembling her weapon with the same methodical precision she had used to disassemble his tactical advantages. Now we go back to being neighbors. You file your mining development proposal through proper channels, we review it according to established procedures, and we negotiate terms that work for everyone involved. And if negotiations fail, then we negotiate harder, Chen suggested helpfully. Humans are quite good at negotiations. We have extensive experience in finding mutually acceptable solutions to complex problems. And if someone decides that military force is a more efficient approach than diplomatic solutions. Apex finished securing her equipment and stood to begin the long walk back to the proving ground. Her voice carried clearly across the distance, calm and conversational, and somehow more terrifying than any battle cry could have been. Then we explained the situation more thoroughly than we did today. The aftermath of enlightenment, as it turned out, involved a great deal of paperwork. Warlord Krexthul sat in the medical bay of Observation Platform 7, undergoing diagnostic scans that confirmed what everyone already knew. He was completely uninjured, despite having been shot 32 times by someone who could have killed him with any one of those shots. The biomedical technicians kept running additional tests, apparently unable to accept that precision of that magnitude was possible without some form of targeting assistance they couldn't detect. The weapon analysis came back inconclusive, reported Chief Medical Officer Dralnex, consulting readings that defied several established principles of ballistic science. The projectiles were standard chemical propellant rounds, manufactured to civilian specifications. No exotic materials, no guidance systems, no technological enhancement of any kind. Krexthul absorbed this information while contemplating the uncomfortable reality that his defeat had been accomplished using what amounted to sporting goods. And the shooter? Unaugmented human female, approximately 40 standard years, no cybernetic enhancement, no genetic modification, no pharmaceutical enhancement detected in blood analysis. Drelnex paused to recalibrate his equipment, apparently hoping that his instruments were malfunctioning rather than recording accurate data. She appears to be exactly what she appears to be, which raised questions that were echoing through diplomatic channels across 17 star systems as various governments attempted to recalculate their strategic positions based on information that had fundamentally altered their understanding of galactic power dynamics. In the administrative offices of Tertius IX's mining cooperative, Coordinator Chen was processing development applications with the same methodical efficiency he had displayed throughout the morning's educational demonstration. The stack of requests had grown considerably larger since word of Apex's performance had spread through interstellar communication networks. The Krillian Development Consortium is offering a 15% increase in standard extraction royalties, reported his assistant, a human woman named Manager Torres, who handled contract negotiations with the patient competence of someone who had been dealing with confused aliens for several decades. Counteroffer at 12% with guaranteed environmental restoration protocols, Chen replied, without looking up from his current review. The Krillians have a tendency to strip mine everything and leave ecological disasters behind. The Vespian Collective is requesting immediate renegotiation of their existing agreements across all human territories. Standard review process. Tell them we'll consider modifications after they provide detailed proposals in proper format. The hegemony is offering military protection for all human colonies in exchange for exclusive mining rights. Chen paused in his paperwork to give this request the consideration it deserved, which was approximately 3 seconds of bemused silence. Declined, politely. The Jek Crystal Singers are requesting a cultural exchange program focused on understanding human approaches to conflict resolution. Approved, but limit the group size to 20 individuals. The last time we had a full Jek delegation, they harmonized the colony's atmospheric processors into shutdown mode. Manager Torres made notes on each response with the practiced efficiency of someone whose job involved translating alien confusion into actionable administrative procedures. Sir, I'm receiving reports that several species are conducting emergency military assessments of human colonies throughout their territories. Expected reaction? Chen acknowledged. How are our people responding? Standard protocols, continuing normal operations, maintaining friendly relations with neighbors, offering assistance with local community projects. Torres consulted her regional communications summary. Colony Administrator Patel reports that the Krillian garrison on Kepler 7 has requested human assistance with upgrading their marksmanship training programs. Approved. Send Instructor Martinez with a selection of sporting rifles and plenty of ammunition. The Krillians learn faster when they can practice extensively. Colony Chief Wang indicates that local Vespian authorities are asking about human involvement in historical military incidents throughout their sector. Standard response. Provide accurate historical records when requested. Maintain transparency regarding capabilities. Emphasize preference for diplomatic solutions. Chen finished reviewing a mineral rights application and moved to the next document in his stack. Anything requiring immediate attention? The hegemony is dispatching a formal diplomatic mission to reassess human integration protocols across their territory. Estimated arrival in 6 standard days. Schedule appropriate welcome ceremonies, full cultural presentation, including demonstration of traditional human hospitality. Chen made a note on his scheduling pad. And arrange for Apex to be available for additional educational demonstrations if requested. She's already volunteered. Apparently she enjoyed this morning's target practice. Meanwhile, in the diplomatic quarters of Platform 7, an emergency conference was attempting to determine what exactly had changed about interstellar politics and what should be done about it. The participants represented every major galactic power, and their discussions had been ongoing for several hours without reaching any clear conclusions. The fundamental question, announced Sub-Chancellor Vixtar, is whether this demonstration represents standard human capabilities or exceptional individual performance. Statistical analysis suggests standard capabilities, reported defense analyst Crixmore, who had been reviewing data from every human colony in known space. Cross-referencing historical incident reports with current population distributions indicates that similar tactical outcomes have occurred wherever humans maintain significant populations. Ambassador Threnchi consulted his diplomatic protocols manual, which contained no guidance for situations where a species revealed that their apparent weakness was actually a deliberate choice. Our governments are requesting recommendations for policy adjustments regarding human relations. What kind of adjustments? Asked Tribune Cassavel. All kinds. Trade negotiations, territorial agreements, security arrangements, cultural exchange programs. Everything we thought we understood about human limitations appears to have been voluntarily maintained rather than technologically imposed. Lorekeeper Vashek had been consulting historical databases throughout the conference, cross-referencing ancient accounts with contemporary observations in an attempt to understand how extensively his species had misinterpreted human behavior. Our ancestors' records contain references to peaceful visitors who carried great storms within their voices. We interpreted this as poetry. It appears to have been tactical assessment. The Vespian military archives describe encounters with small creatures who moved like wind through stone, added war correspondent Zielnix. Our strategists assumed these were metaphorical descriptions of unknown alien species. It never occurred to anyone that they might be literal descriptions of humans. Harmonic Consul Zektil had been generating stress harmonics throughout the discussion, her crystalline form resonating with frequencies that made sensitive equipment issue warning alerts. The implications extend beyond military capabilities. If humans chose to integrate peacefully into galactic civilization, despite possessing superior technological and tactical advantages, then our entire understanding of interstellar political dynamics requires fundamental revision. Or, suggested a new voice from the conference room's entrance, you could simply accept that humans prefer cooperation to conquest and continue with normal diplomatic relations. The assembled representatives turned to see Apex entering the conference room, still wearing the same practical clothing she had worn during the morning's demonstration. She moved with the same casual competence she had displayed while systematically dismantling the galaxy's most feared warrior, and her presence made several of the observers unconsciously check the locations of their emergency exits. We thought, said Sub-Chancellor Vixtar carefully, that additional clarification might be beneficial regarding human intentions toward existing interstellar agreements. Apex settled into an available chair with the air of someone attending a routine community meeting rather than a diplomatic crisis session. Human intentions are the same as they've always been. We want to live peacefully with our neighbors, engage in mutually beneficial trade, and occasionally borrow each other's equipment when our replicators malfunction. And if conflicts arise? We resolve them through discussion, compromise, and creative problem-solving, same as we've been doing for the past several centuries. And if discussion fails? Apex considered the question with the same methodical approach she had applied to her marksmanship demonstration. Then we discussed the situation more persuasively. Defense analyst Crixmore had been reviewing tactical assessments throughout this conversation, and the results of her analysis were causing her professional confidence to undergo systematic deconstruction. Our military planning departments are requesting clarification regarding human defensive capabilities. Specifically, they want to know what level of force would be required to successfully invade human territory. Why would anyone want to invade human territory? Apex asked, genuinely puzzled. We don't have anything that isn't available through normal trade agreements, and invasion would be tremendously inconvenient for everyone involved. Hypothetically. Apex shrugged. Hypothetically, invasion would require dealing with several 100 million humans who learned marksmanship before they learned to read. Most of them haven't had opportunities to practice on modern military hardware, so they'd probably find the experience quite educational. The silence that followed this statement was broken by the sound of Tribune Cassavel's communication device, receiving urgent messages from his superiors. He glanced at the incoming data and felt his diplomatic training struggle to process information that exceeded all established parameters for crisis management. My government, he announced slowly, is requesting immediate renegotiation of all existing agreements with human colonies, with terms to be determined entirely by human preferences. The Krillian Assembly is offering a formal apology for centuries of inadequate appreciation of human diplomatic restraint, added Sub-Chancellor Vixtar. The Vespian Collective is proposing establishment of a permanent cultural exchange program designed to learn proper methods of civilized coexistence from humanity, reported Ambassador Threnke. Apex listened to each announcement with the patient attention of someone who was not particularly surprised by any of it. Those all sound like reasonable starting points for improved relations. Chen handles contract negotiations if you want to formalize any new agreements. And the mining rights for Tertius 9? Asked Laura Keeper Vashek. Standard development partnership. Shared costs, shared profits, shared responsibility for environmental protection. Same terms we offer everyone. Apex stood to leave, apparently considering the diplomatic crisis successfully resolved. Unless anyone has objections to cooperative resource management? Nobody had objections. As she reached the conference room door, Apex paused to address the assembled representatives one final time. For what it's worth, this morning's demonstration was completely unnecessary. Humans have been living peacefully throughout galactic civilization for centuries, without anyone feeling the need to challenge our neighbors to armed combat. Krexthul could have simply filed a development proposal through normal administrative channels. Then why did you agree to his challenge? Asked Sub-Chancellor Vixtar. Apex smiled with the expression of someone who had genuinely enjoyed her morning's work, because sometimes the most efficient way to teach patience is to demonstrate what happens when people run out of it. 6 months later, the Tertius 9 mining operation had become the most profitable cooperative development project in hegemony space. Interstellar diplomatic relations had achieved unprecedented levels of cordial efficiency, and Warlord Krexthul had retired from military service to pursue a career in conflict resolution consulting. The universe, as it turned out, was much more pleasant when its apex predators preferred gardening to conquest.